There are moments in nursing that define who you are as a professional, moments that test everything you believe in. What I'm about to share with you changed my life forever. It started as just another call, just another patient, just another day. But what I discovered behind the doors of that mansion exposed secrets so dark, so disturbing, that when I reported it to the hospital director, even he couldn't believe what he was hearing. This is my story. This is what really happened during that routine home visit. My name is Lauren Fitzgerald, and I've been a registered nurse for 12 years. I thought I'd seen everything in this profession, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to face. I remember that morning perfectly. It was a crisp autumn day in Portland, Oregon, where I'd been working as a home healthcare nurse for the past 5 years. After spending 7 years in hospital emergency rooms, I thought home visits would be calmer, more predictable. I was wrong. That Tuesday started like any other. I checked my schedule over coffee in my small apartment downtown, expecting the usual elderly patients with diabetes management, wound care, medication reviews. Then my phone rang. It was dispatch assigning me an urgent case, a last-minute addition to my route. The address was in the West Hills, Portland's most exclusive neighborhood, where tech executives and old money families lived behind iron gates and perfectly manicured hedges. The patient was an 82-year-old man named Robert Castellan. The notes said routine health assessment and medication review. His daughter had specifically requested a nurse visit. Simple enough, I thought. I grabbed my medical bag, got in my car, and headed toward the hills. The drive took 40 minutes through winding roads lined with massive homes. When I arrived at the Castellan estate, I sat in my car for a moment, taking in the size of the property. A 3-story Victorian mansion with stone columns and floor-to-ceiling windows. The gate was open, almost inviting. I walked up the long driveway, my shoes crunching on imported gravel, and rang the doorbell. A woman in her late 40s answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting right there. She introduced herself as Patricia Castellan, Robert's daughter. Her smile was perfect, too perfect, like a mask carefully painted on. If this story has already grabbed your attention, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. Patricia led me through a foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my annual salary. Everything was immaculate, almost sterile. Fresh flowers in expensive vases, artwork that looked museum quality, furniture that no one seemed to actually sit on, but something felt off. The house was too quiet, too controlled. Patricia walked quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the marble, barely making eye contact with me. She explained that her father had been feeling weak lately, nothing serious, but she wanted a professional assessment. Her voice was rehearsed, like she'd practiced this conversation. We climbed a grand staircase to the second floor. The hallway stretched long and dark despite the afternoon light trying to push through heavy curtains. She stopped at a door at the end of the hall and knocked twice before opening it. The smell hit me first, that unmistakable combination of unwashed sheets, stale air, and something else, something medicinal and wrong. The room was large but felt cramped, cluttered with furniture pushed against walls. Heavy drapes blocked most of the natural light, and there, in a hospital bed that seemed out of place among the antique furniture, was Robert Castellan. He looked nothing like I expected. For someone from such obvious wealth, he appeared neglected. His hair was long and uncombed, his face sunken, his eyes hollow but alert. When he saw me, those eyes widened with something I recognized immediately as fear. Not fear of me, but fear of the situation, fear of his daughter standing in the doorway watching us. Patricia remained by the door, arms crossed, observing. I introduced myself warmly, trying to establish trust. Robert nodded but said nothing. His lips were cracked. His hands trembled slightly. I asked Patricia if I could examine her father privately. Standard procedure. She hesitated, then agreed, but said she'd be right outside if I needed anything. The way she said it felt like a warning. Thank you for staying with me this far. It shows you're feeling what I felt when I lived through all of this. So go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications, because what comes next changes everything. At the moment Patricia closed the door, Robert's entire demeanor shifted. He reached for my hand with surprising urgency, his grip weak but desperate. His voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "Please," he said, "please help me. I've tried to tell people, but no one listens." I pulled a chair close to his bed, speaking softly to calm him. I assured him that whatever he told me would be taken seriously. As I began my physical assessment, the evidence of neglect became impossible to ignore. His body was emaciated, bones visible through papery skin. He had pressure sores on his lower back and heels, wounds that should have been treated weeks ago. His mouth was dry, tongue coated white, signs of severe dehydration. I checked his medication tray on the nightstand. The pills were expired, some by months. The dates on the prescription bottles didn't match his current needs. This wasn't routine care gone slightly wrong. This was systematic neglect. I asked him when he'd last eaten a proper meal. He couldn't remember. When had he last been outside this room? He said months, maybe longer. He told me he used to live independently in his own home downtown, managing fine with some help. Then Patricia convinced him to move in with her family after his wife died 2 years ago. At first it was nice, he said. Then gradually things changed. They isolated him, took control of his finances, stopped his physical therapy appointments. He tried to call his friends, but they disconnected his phone. He tried to leave, but they said he was too sick, too confused, that he needed constant supervision. But his mind was sharp. I could see that clearly. He knew exactly what was happening to him. He just had no power to stop it. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Write it in the comments. It's incredible to see people from so many places following stories like this. And if you're connecting with this, hit that subscribe button, because these real-life accounts need to be heard. Robert begged me to look in the drawer of his nightstand. His voice shook with a mixture of fear and hope. I hesitated, knowing I was crossing into territory that could have serious consequences, but his eyes pleaded with me, and I couldn't ignore the desperation I saw there. I opened the drawer carefully, quietly. Inside were stacks of papers, documents he'd apparently been hiding, bank statements showing massive withdrawals he claimed he never authorized, legal papers transferring his properties into Patricia's name, medical records indicating he'd been declared mentally incompetent by a doctor he said he'd never met, power of attorney documents, living trust modifications, everything systematically designed to strip him of control over his own life. My hands trembled as I flipped through the papers. This wasn't just neglect. This was financial exploitation, possibly elder abuse on a massive scale. Robert whispered that Patricia's husband had lost his tech company in a bad investment 2 years ago. They were drowning in debt despite the appearance of wealth. His assets were the lifeline they needed, and they were draining him dry while keeping him prisoner in this gilded cage. I felt sick. I'd heard about elder abuse in training, seen minor cases, but never something this calculated, this cruel. I asked Robert if he had other family members, anyone who could help. He shook his head. His son lived in Australia, and Patricia had told him that Robert didn't want contact, that he was too ill. All his friends had been told the same. He was completely isolated, completely vulnerable. I knew I had to document everything, but I needed to be smart about it. If Patricia suspected I knew the truth, she might prevent me from leaving or destroy the evidence. I took photos of the documents with my phone, being as quiet as possible. I photographed his wounds, his medications, the conditions of the room. Evidence. I needed irrefutable evidence. I continued my assessment, trying to appear routine, knowing Patricia was likely listening at the door. I checked Robert's vital signs. His blood pressure was dangerously low, pulse weak and irregular. He needed immediate medical attention, possibly hospitalization. But I knew if I suggested that now, Patricia would refuse, and I'd lose any chance to help him. I needed a strategy. Robert pointed weakly to another spot in the room, underneath a loose floorboard near the window. He said there were more documents there, things Patricia didn't know he'd kept. I moved carefully, quietly, lifting the board. Inside was a small metal box containing his original will, unchanged, leaving his estate divided among multiple charities and family members. There were also letters he'd written but never been able to send, detailing the abuse, crying out for help to friends who never received them. My heart broke reading his words. This proud, accomplished man reduced to hiding evidence of his own imprisonment in his own daughter's home. I heard footsteps in the hallway. I quickly replaced the floorboard and returned to Robert's bedside, pretending to adjust his pillows. Patricia opened the door without knocking, asking if everything was all right. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the room, looking for anything out of place. I maintained my professional composure, telling her that her father needed some adjustments to his care plan, better nutrition, wound treatment, updated medications. She nodded along, agreeable on the surface, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. She was assessing me, determining if I was a threat. I finished my examination and told Patricia I needed to return to the office to file my report and arrange for additional services. She walked me to the door, chatting pleasantly about the weather, thanking me for coming. As I reached my car, I glanced back at the mansion. In the second-floor window, I saw Robert watching me, his pale face barely visible through the curtains. His expression said everything. Please don't forget me. Please come back. I drove away with my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing. I had evidence now, but what would I do with it? Who would believe me against a wealthy, respected family? And more importantly, how could I act fast enough to save Robert before they realized what I knew? I drove straight back to the hospital, my mind spinning with everything I'd witnessed. I needed to report this immediately, but I also needed to be strategic. I'd worked in healthcare long enough to know that accusations against wealthy families, especially involving elder abuse and financial exploitation, could backfire spectacularly if not handled correctly. I pulled into the hospital parking lot and sat in my car for a moment, organizing my thoughts. I had photos, I had Robert's testimony, I had documented medical neglect. It should be enough. It had to be enough. But before I could even get out out of my car, my phone rang. It was Patricia Castellan. My stomach dropped. Her voice was smooth, friendly, completely different from the tense woman I'd just left. She said she'd been thinking about our visit, about my recommendations for her father's care. Then her tone shifted, became more pointed. She mentioned that she and her husband were prominent donors to several hospitals in Portland. She casually dropped names of board members, administrators, people with power. Then came the offer. She said she understood that home healthcare nurses didn't make much money, that it must be difficult living in an expensive city like Portland. She wanted to thank me personally for my discretion and professionalism. She offered me $5,000, cash, just for being understanding about her father's situation. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a thank you. This was a bribe, thinly veiled as gratitude. She was testing me, seeing if I could be bought, if I could be silenced. I chose my words carefully, telling her that I appreciated her consideration, but that I was just doing my job, that my report would be standard and professional. There was a long pause on the other end. Then her voice turned ice cold. She said she hoped I understood that making unfounded accusations against respected families could have serious consequences for my career, that I should think very carefully about what I put in my report. That mistakes could be very costly for someone in my position. It was a threat, clear and direct. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in that parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to calm my shaking hands. Patricia had just threatened my career, my livelihood, everything I'd worked for, but Robert's face kept appearing in my mind, that desperate, helpless expression. I couldn't abandon him. I wouldn't. I walked into the hospital and went directly to the office of Dr. Marcus Brennan, the director of our home healthcare program. He was a good man, fair and experienced, but also cautious, political, aware of how the hospital's reputation could be damaged by controversy. I knocked on his door and asked if he had a moment. He gestured for me to sit, already sensing something was wrong. I laid it all out for him. Everything I'd seen, everything Robert had told me, the documents, the threats from Patricia. I showed him the photos on my phone, the evidence of neglect, the financial documents, the expired medications. I watched his expression change from concern to disbelief to worry. When I finished, he sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He asked me if I understood the seriousness of what I was alleging. I said yes. He asked if I was absolutely certain, if there was any possibility I'd misinterpreted the situation. I told him there was no misinterpretation. This was clear, documented abuse. He stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city. Then he said something that shocked me. He said the Castellan family donated over $2 million to this hospital last year, that Patricia's husband, despite his financial troubles I'd discovered, still sat on the hospital's advisory board, that making accusations against them without absolute proof could result in lawsuits, loss of funding, damage to the hospital's reputation. He asked me if I was prepared for that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him this wasn't about money or reputation. This was about a man being abused, possibly dying, while his own family stole from him. I told him if he wouldn't act, I would go to the authorities myself. He turned back to me, his face conflicted. He said he needed time to think, to consult with legal counsel, to figure out the proper channels. I said we didn't have time. Every day Robert stayed in that house was another day of suffering. Then Dr. Brennan and I argued for another 20 minutes. I'd never pushed back against authority like this in my career, but I couldn't back down. Finally, he agreed to a compromise. He would contact Adult Protective Services and file a formal report, but I would need to be prepared for an investigation that could take weeks or even months. I told him weeks or months could be too late for Robert. He said it was the proper procedure and that going around it could jeopardize the entire case. I left his office frustrated, but relieved that at least something was being set in motion. I filed my official report, detailing every observation, every conversation, every piece of evidence. I made copies of everything and stored them in multiple places. If this was going to be a fight, I needed to be prepared. 2 days later, Adult Protective Services contacted me for a formal interview. I spent 3 hours walking them through everything, providing my documentation, explaining the urgency of the situation. The caseworker seemed genuinely concerned, but warned me that investigations involving wealthy families often moved slowly, that these families had resources to fight back, to delay, to create complications. She was right. Within a week, I received a letter from an attorney representing the Castellan family. It was a cease and desist order, threatening to sue me for defamation, invasion of privacy, and professional misconduct. They claimed I had violated patient confidentiality, exceeded my authority, and made malicious false allegations to damage their reputation. The letter was 12 pages of legal threats, each one designed to terrify me into silence. I contacted a lawyer of my own, using most of my savings for the consultation. He told me honestly that I was in a dangerous position. Even though I'd acted ethically, the Castellans could drag me through expensive litigation that would destroy me financially, even if I eventually won. But he also said that if what I'd documented was true, I had a moral and legal obligation to see it through. The hospital administration began treating me differently. Colleagues who'd been friendly became distant. My schedule was changed without explanation. I was called into HR multiple times to discuss my conduct, my judgment, my future with the organization. The pressure became unbearable. The Castellan family's lawyer contacted everyone I knew, every colleague, every friend, questioning my character, my mental stability, my professional competence. They painted me as a disgruntled employee looking for attention, someone who'd wildly misinterpreted a family's devoted care for their elderly father. They found minor mistakes in my past work records, things everyone does, and magnified them into a pattern of incompetence. Local media somehow got wind of the story, not the truth about Robert's abuse, but a twisted version where I was the villain, a nurse who'd breached patient confidentiality and made reckless accusations against a respected family. My face was on the news, my name in articles, all of it negative. I received threatening emails and phone calls. People I'd never met telling me I was destroying innocent lives, that I should be fired, that I should be prosecuted. My apartment building manager asked me to leave because other tenants complained about reporters. I stayed with a friend, barely sleeping, constantly anxious. I questioned everything. Had I done the right thing? Was destroying my own life worth it? Should I have just walked away, filed a quiet report, let the system handle it slowly? But then I'd remember Robert's face, his desperate plea for help, and I knew I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd done nothing. The Adult Protective Services investigation continued, slowly, bureaucratically. They visited the Castellan home for a welfare check. Patricia and her husband were prepared. The house perfect. Robert seemingly well cared for, denying everything I'd reported. They claimed he was confused, sometimes delusional, that they loved him and were doing their best. Without Robert's full cooperation, which he was too afraid to give with his daughter standing right there, the initial investigation found insufficient evidence. I felt like I was drowning. My career was in ruins. My reputation destroyed, my savings depleted on legal fees, and I hadn't even managed to save Robert. Everything I'd sacrificed seemed pointless. And then, something unexpected happened. Robert's son in Australia, Daniel Castellan, somehow learned about the investigation. He'd been trying to contact his father for months, but Patricia had blocked every attempt, claiming Robert was too ill for calls. When Daniel saw the news reports about the investigation, he immediately flew to Portland. He hired his own attorney and demanded access to his father. What he found when he finally got into that house confirmed everything I'd reported. Robert was in even worse condition than when I'd seen him. Daniel was horrified. He immediately removed his father from the home and admitted him to a hospital for emergency treatment. With Daniel's support, Robert finally felt safe enough to tell the complete truth. He gave a full statement to authorities, corroborating every detail I'd documented. Financial investigators uncovered hundreds of thousands of dollars in unauthorized transfers, forged signatures, manipulated legal documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia and her husband were arrested and charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, and fraud. The district attorney credited my initial report as the catalyst that saved Robert's life. Suddenly, the narrative changed. The media that had crucified me now called me a hero. The hospital that had distanced itself now praised my integrity. But none of that mattered as much as seeing Robert recovering in the hospital, his son by his side, finally safe and free. The lawsuit against me was dropped. The hospital offered me my job back with an apology, but I'd changed. The experience had shown me the dark side of healthcare, the politics, the way institutions protect themselves over patients. I took a position with an advocacy organization that fights for elder rights, using my experience to help others in similar situations. Robert recovered enough to live independently again with support from Daniel. He sent me a letter thanking me, saying I'd given him back his life and his dignity. Patricia and her husband faced criminal prosecution. Their perfect facade crumbled, their crimes exposed. Looking back now, 3 years later, I understand that doing the right thing isn't always easy, or safe, or rewarding in the ways you expect. It cost me almost everything temporarily, but it saved a life, and that's why I became a nurse in the first place. So, I want to ask you, would you have had the courage to do what I did? What would you do if you discovered something like this in your workplace? The truth is, these situations happen more often than we want to believe. Vulnerable people being exploited by those closest to them, and professionals who see it but stay silent because speaking up is too dangerous, too costly, too complicated. I made a choice that day to not stay silent, and it changed everything for me and for Robert. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced an ethical dilemma at work? How did you handle it? Your story might help someone else facing a similar situation. If you found this story impactful, please subscribe to this channel. There are more real stories from healthcare professionals, stories that need to be heard, experiences that reveal the truth behind the profession. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. And when you're done here, check out the recommended video where another nurse shares an equally shocking experience that will make you question everything you thought you knew about patient care. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for caring enough to hear the truth. And remember, sometimes the most routine day can change your life forever.